so far we didn't receive many questions. In fact, we received only one. I will share it here. This is a question specifically related to the presentation by Caillou, but I think it relates to all presentations. And if we move to performance-based approaches and we design specific, more innovative ventilation systems using these performance-based approaches, what about regulations? And the question here is, how are the systems that are presented by Samuel in line with the local energy performance and indoor climate regulations, which are in Belgium quite strict, but I can assume that in other countries we might have a similar conflict. Okay, so Samuel, maybe you can go first.
Yeah, so indeed, the 2 or 3 systems I show you are not directly complying the current standard in Belgium for new building in the current regulation, but it was in the context of a research, also for the different research about performance-based approach and indicators. So the regulation can also evolve in the future. A short term in Belgium, it is already possible to apply this system in the context of retrofitting, where the requirements are more limited compared to new building. And in the future, we can for sure imagine that the regulation can evolve. And for information, we are several here around the table involved in a European standard for ventilation in residential application. And the standard will normally allow to each country to use performance-based approach to assess the performance of ventilation system about the air, the indoor air quality and the efficiency of the system.
Samuel, maybe I can just add that for Flanders, it has been accepted, these new systems in the EPC. So there has been a new inspection protocol being written, and these new systems are also allowed for the subsidies. So these are very recent changes that we were doing together with the ministry, the energy agency, and the ventilation sector.
Yes, and then indeed, I believe the way forward is to include performance-based approaches in standards. European standard is a start. Local standards should then also follow or adopt the European standard. And that is an alternative to most prescribed approaches in the current standards. In some countries, for instance in Spain, but also in the UK, you already have as an alternative a performance-based approach. So in those countries, you often still have the choice as a designer to rely on some reference systems that are also defined in those standards, which also comply with the performances, but you can still choose another type of system and not follow the reference systems by showing that innovative systems comply with performance-based approaches. I don't see other questions popping up here in this document.
Arnold, I have put them in the questions for all because there are some questions arriving which I don't really know who they are addressed to. So.
Okay. Let's go through them. So for commercial software, some tools were already indicated. Baptiste Poirier used Contam, I believe. I think Samuel also used the same tool.
Yeah, that was also Contam.
And Klaas, can you elaborate a little bit on the simulation approach you used?
Yeah, so the simulations themselves are based on an open source Modelica library. So it's a modeling language, let's say, but we use a commercial tool to develop the models. So it's based on, well, on an open source building energy and energy simulation environment. But we added at Ghent University to have some more functionalities. We added some models of our own, let's say. But in that sense, we have a combined environment for the thermal and energy aspects and the IAQ.
Yeah, and then for the last presentation, this was a new development using various approaches, also some expert-based estimations, I believe, Yves.
Yes, indeed. So it's also involved checking the results to field research to see if it's comparable, yes or no.
Okay, and then second question is here. What do you think about Eurovent IAQ label? Maybe I'm not sure for whom this question is, but do you have more experiences with the approach, Yves?
No, we are not a member of Eurovent, so I can't really explain what the differences are. The main difference, I think, between both labels is that Eurovent is really a certification, so you have to pay for any label, while the EVIA label is something that is free for all EVIA members. So the moment a company member joins, they can use the label as many times as they want. So there's no certification, so no paying certification necessary. But I don't know what the differences are between both. We are not members of Eurovent.
Yeah, this of course opens also the question to harmonization. Already here in 4 talks, we have 4 different approaches. There are different labels, so it's quite necessary to go through to harmonization through the standards and come to similar assessment and labeling.
That's right.
The question about opening windows, how are these taken into account, and also how do they contribute to controlling heat in summer? It's true that the assessment of systems shown here is mainly related to the European market, where we have a rather mild climate, let's say, and heating and energy use for heating is the focus points. But well, it's an open question for everyone. What about open windows and the summer comfort?
I can give a comment about that. So it's always possible to open the windows during the winter, but with an efficient ventilation system, this will be not necessary. And this will always contribute to a higher energy consumption. During the summer, it's also important to have an efficient ventilation system, for example, for the periods where the outside temperature is higher than inside, to have limited ventilation flow rate and so on. And then, apart and independent from the basic ventilation system, you can for sure use ventilative cooling during the night, for example, using windows or other specific component to do a kind of pre-cooling of the building, but this can be done independently from the basic ventilation system.
And combine that with passive solutions like solar shading.
Okay, I don't think, well, given the time, and I don't see any urgent questions at the moment. You can, of course, also still contact the speakers afterwards if you have further questions.